Hi everyone, this is Just Chat with Denise and Amir. So we created this stream because Amir and Denise likes to go out and chop it up. And as we're chopping it up, we talk about some very, very interesting stuff. So we thought, why not put everybody to see? So this is where we just talk about everyday issues, everyday life, things that go on. Um, some will be funny, won't be as funny, and we'll just chop it up. And we want to share this with you. And Amir, do you have anything you want to say?
Hey, first and foremost, I want to say hello to everybody out there. Like Denise said, this is our norm. This started out as just our Tuesday time that we would just decompress from work and all the other things that life throws at you. But it just turned into an amazing ability to just have conversation, open and free conversation. Usually it would just be her and myself, but then it started expanding to people who would come into the spot as we were just talking. And the conversations, as you said, would just become really, really good because you don't realize how great other people's perspectives are on simple, everyday things that sometimes either you take for granted or you just don't really even look at it from another perspective. So I can't wait to dive in. I'm looking forward to all the amazing topics that we're going to cover. And who knows, you might have a surprise guest or some surprise people, every now and again as well. So
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to it.
So let's go, Amir.
Yes, let's get
So
it.
actually, I did have something that I wanted to talk about. So yesterday I was in a cab and I'm riding along, and there was this mother walking with her children, a little boy and a little girl, and she is just going off like MF this and be this and just going. And I thought about it. I said, growing up, I didn't hear my parents curse, and if they did, they never cursed at us. Like, we would never bees growing up. I don't think my parents ever called us a bee. I never heard that, or a little MF. Like, those are the things that I didn't hear. But it seems like with our newer generations, that's becoming the norm to speak to kids like that. And then we look at children when the little 5-year-old comes up and goes, "Sit your ass down," or something like that, and we're looking at the child like, well, what was that? Like, what kind of language are you? It starts at home. I believe everything starts at home. And we can't, then we send them out to schools. The teachers got to deal with this stuff. So let's talk about that, Amir. Let's dive into that, because that was like, I was like, how you talk to your child like that?
It's funny that you bring that up. I think that we are in such an interesting time in space right now, just generally speaking. But to a point that you made earlier about it starting at home, we've lost a sense of home and we've lost a sense of community. A big part of the reason why, as you stated, we didn't have those kinds of conversations, generally speaking, is because you were raised by a community. You were raised by not only the family, but the entire community. And as far as the community was concerned, they chimed in if and when, or stepped in if and when they thought that you were doing something online, you were not representing yourself and your family in the best light. In this current version of the world, it's kind of hard to step in, like you said, when you see these kinds of things, because without having a good model to look to or to emulate, we see our young people just going off of, unfortunately, what they're seeing online, what they're seeing in TV shows and things like that. And a lot of that behavior, a lot of the language, and at home as well, but a lot of language and behavior is what is fueling what we're seeing. And it's no longer, the sense that you said of us seeing nurturing situations. I know as a child, even though you would see mothers out, we didn't have the advent, of cell phones. So mom paid attention to you, or you were in tow. If she was pushing one of y'all in the stroller, the other ones were holding on to the stroller, or holding on to her coattails and things like that. And to be fair, like you said, you don't see that so much anymore. So I'm concerned, just like you are, because I'm worried about, as you just said, what's that child going to be like at 7? What's that child going to be like at 12? And most certainly by the hit them teen years.
Please don't talk about the teen years. But the thing is, like, the respect is gone as well, because if you don't have respect at home, how are you going to have respect for anybody out in the street or in public or in schools or wherever you're at? That respect's gone. That respect is not there. So I don't know. I had a discussion because when I got to my destination yesterday, I was talking to a couple of ladies that I was with, and I said, remember back in the day when you used to see guys walk past the church? Maybe they didn't even go to church, but when they walk past the church, if they had a beer in their hand or a cigarette in their hand, they would hide, even though they couldn't hit, but still they would give that respect, that reverence to hide it at least until they passed the church, and then they would go ahead and those are the things that's wrong. Because now they'll sit right on in front of the church and smoke and drink and everything else. First, they'll do it right. They'll do everything out in the open now, and it doesn't matter. They don't care who sees. Back in the day, we were afraid because, like you said, the village was raising us. It took a village, and if a grown-up was doing something and went to our parents, you best believe our parents handled us. It's not like that anymore, because now if you say something to somebody, child, now the parent wants to fight you. And it's like, how do we can't blame society for our little black boys and girls that are not being treated right in the streets, or that the cops are gunning down, or whatever the case may be, when we're not teaching them at home. Because I can say all day, oh, I have the perfect child. My child is so perfect. We don't know what our children do when we're not around. We don't know what our children, and then some of us do know what our children are doing when we're not around. And we'll get on camera and be like, oh, my child is the perfect angel. But it has to start at home, and this is the thing that's missing now.
I agree. I think that, again, I think you touched on something that is really prevalent to the conversation. It starts with respect, but it also starts with awareness of oneself. And, one of the things that I feel, to your point, is missing in our community is that sense of self. We had, such a thing where you kind of understood yourself, meaning your parents, your aunts, your uncles, and again, the community sort of helped you blossom. To your point, if and when you see children who may or may not be doing things as they could and should, again, if you try to speak to it, there's a resistance there that we didn't have as children.
We couldn't.
And we couldn't. But the other part of it is, we have to look ourselves in the mirror. I know most of us don't really come into ourselves until we get to be much older. But we had such a wonderful, nurturing undertone when we were younger that is not there now. Communities as we know and as they existed in our childhood aren't as strong. I'm not going to say they don't exist at all, but they're definitely not as strong. And I think another challenge that we have is there is a broken bridge between the youth and the elders. I know, I can't speak for you, but I know for myself, I spent a lot of time going to visit my cousins and my grandma and so forth and so on as a young person. So you got to bridge that gap because you went over to grandma's house and, you kissed her and she pulled a couple of pennies out, a couple of quarters out of her pocket, go get an ice cream and things like that. Exactly. But it led to you being able to keep that connection. And then, they sat there and they gave you real knowledge and worldly information that was prevalent. To your point, I'm watching people, I do the same thing, when I'm out and about, I'm watching people, I'm like, huh? Like, What are we doing?
Right.
So we're not gonna say nothing. You're just gonna let your child stand up. Like I ride the trains. I still ride public
Mhm.
transportation. And on the trains, I watch people whose kids are just standing on the seats, and I'm like, you're not gonna say nothing. You're just gonna let little man, stand on
Little
the
man.
seats. You're just, and but I think that to your point, the thing that gets you is when you hear that language, even as an adult. And myself, I'm 57 years on the planet. I worry about that because again, this child, that those early stages, that stuff stays with you sometimes well into your adulthood, and it shapes a lot of how your life pans out. So I don't know, it's that's a slippery slope.
So okay, so you said knowing yourself. How does a child know themselves? It I, we are groomed into who we are or who we become. So if back to how we started this, if it's not being taught at home, then how do we know ourselves? Especially as a child, because what does a child know about knowing themselves? You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
So how do
Well, I think one of the things that we have to become more aware of or keen to is when your children are young, they have certain tendencies that kind of are tell signs of
Mhm.
some of the things that excite them. For instance, kids start drawing early, or your child could be really good with their hands. They take things and build stuff. And you're like, if we become attuned to those things and we then nurture those tendencies, that's what I mean by trying to help your children kind of identify those things.
so helping them,
Mhm.
but it if it's not being taught at home,
True.
how does this child? Because they can go to school and a teacher can see some good in them,
Mhm.
and shout out to all you teachers out there, because a lot of teachers help to groom young people that are lacking that at home, and then some don't. But it's like a catch 22, I guess, because you every child is not going to have that teacher.
You're right.
Every child's not going to have that teacher, and if they don't have the parent at home and they don't have the teacher in the, then they're
they, they fall into that gray
right.
area that we
Exactly.
unfortunately, to your point, see so many of our young people in. You know, it's an interesting dynamic because as a parent, I know you're a parent, I'm a parent. It's amazing how even if you have more than one child, the two of them can be totally
Totally
different, even
different.
if you
Totally
raise them
different.
at the same time, just because of again
Hmm.
some of what you're saying, which is their experiences not only in school but just in general. When you get out here in the world, the interesting thing is people very rarely tell you how interesting that journey is. Yes, we want you to go to school. We want you to do specific things so that skill sets.
Right.
But the world is a whole different beast, and everything from, to your point, the beat downs that come from navigating your early years of going to school
That
to some of the other things that we find ourselves trying to deal with now at this late stage. But again, I think it goes back to, like you said, if you're blessed enough and fortunate enough to have a wonderful system in place, and it's pretty much has to start with
right.
that. We have to start bringing back some of these systems
Yeah,
that
we
we.
gotta start somewhere. I don't know, but I would hate to say it's a lost cause,
Mhm.
because again, it starts with the parents, and the way things are now, parents one can't be parents because the system is always intervening, because a child can tell a mother, "Oh, you can't talk to me like that, or you can't do this, or you can't do that," and I'll be darned if a child that I gave birth to don't tell me what I can and can't do. I can't say this to you. You little ingrate. I'm gonna need you to go sit down somewhere and think about what you just said. But it's that.
It's like you said, it's a very frustrating space to be in. And again, we would love to be able to intervene sometimes, for lack of a better word.
And we can.
And we can't because, as you stated, there's like I said, that pushback. And the wild thing about it is, and I say this to people, as much as I can, I'm not trying to intervene to tell you how to raise your child. What I'm trying to hopefully share with you is another perspective of how the world is also perceiving your situation. But then what's going to happen once your child now eventually has to really navigate this journey in this space. So if you can get a handle on that at those earlier stages, it makes it so much better for when they get to be older.
Right.
And then there's just to be enamored, with what our children think things are. I grew up, here in the Bronx, and where I live, the projects I lived in. My eldest daughter, she was enamored with the project. She grew up in a whole house. And I was like, please don't let that ideology and that, energy fool you into thinking it was something great. It wasn't terrible,
Right.
but it had its challenges. And I think that we sometimes negate that when we're having these conversations amongst ourselves. We're so excited about what somebody else got to experience, totally negating what our experiences have been. And I think, to your point, we've got to find a way to nurture that and expand on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we got to do that. Yeah. It's just like you said, it's a slippery slope. And not to give up on our young people. Trust me, not to give up on our young people at all. It's just I think this is more for the parents than for the young people, because again, they only do what they're taught or what they see, and that's how they come into their own. As you said, how they come into their own. So it has a lot to do with parenting, and even if the community can't step in, at least the families should be able to step in. A favorite aunt, an uncle, a close. I'm not even gonna say a close cousin, because cousins can lead each other astray. I'm not even gonna say that. I know, trust me. I wouldn't even say cousins, but unless it's like an older cousin, somebody that's of age, that's much older, that can tell them, okay, listen, no, this is not right, or you shouldn't be doing this, or you know what, I see you have a lot of potential. Just something that somebody that is a role model for our children, or our grandchildren, I should say, because we're not having more children.
No.
But as for our grandchildren and our great grandchildren, like I don't want my great. And the way this world is now, it's scary, and I don't want them to get caught up in that. I want them to be better than that. I want them to be better. I want them to see, listen, no, you have potential. What is it that you like to do? My grandson likes to play basketball, so I tried to get him into a basketball league, but he had to be 12 in order to get in, but he was only 11 at the time. So my thing is, no, if that's what they're interested in, then let's get them in there. Let's push them to be great at whatever it is that they want to do. And don't just tell them, oh, you can't do this and you're not good at that. And even if they're not good, that's okay. They can get good.
Everything, you make another great point. Besides, again, taking interest in whatever it is your young people are interested in. As adults, this is something that we have to do. We have to work on us. That's something that's not talked about as much as it could and it should be. Because as I stated a little earlier, a lot of us are dealing with childhood trauma that we buried for a number of reasons. We're not going to get into all the reasons.
Oh, we're going to have a discussion about that one day.
But with that having been said, if you don't work on you, if you don't understand how to love yourself, then there's technically no real way for you to teach that to someone else. So, again, yes, we want to help save and protect the children, but a lot of us have to work on ourselves and get ourselves in a better headspace, get ourselves in a better space in general. I know that, when we talk about stuff like this, people shy away and, we kind of feel weird about it. But the truth is the truth. So many of us are looking for validation outside of ourselves. And I get it, and I understand it, but the reality of it all is the validation really starts within. And the more you love on you, the more you understand that, the more you work from that space, you'll see it start to permeate in the spaces and people and things around you.
And I'm glad, you know what, because we spent the first half hour talking about children. But you just brought up a good point that I think we should touch on now.
Okay.
And that's childhood trauma. Because and the reason why people have childhood trauma is this. Families bury a lot of secrets in the family, not realizing that they were only hurting the people that were involved. And children grew up with these things, not being able to talk about it, not being able to express how they go, not being, and that's a good point that you brought up because these are things, and one thing black folks, I need y'all to understand. It's okay to go talk to somebody, a therapist, a psychologist. It's okay. It's okay. We are not perfect, and it's okay. It's nothing wrong with a person who sits down with somebody and have a conversation. I'm professional. It's nothing wrong with it. So, but then we have to learn also to break those generational curses. We have to learn how to do that because a lot of times we have children, and then those same traumas that we haven't gotten over, we pass that on to our children. They pass it on to their children, and next thing you know, that somebody has to break that generational curse. Somebody needs to break that.
I agree. Again, one of the first things I think we have to work on, from that standpoint, is identifying what those traumas may look like and or be. And the interesting thing about it is it's not only always family. Sometimes through your growth process, especially when you're young, get into your teen and your early adulthood, hanging out, with your friends. There are moments that you go through. Everything from in your mind not being the person in your group who people migrate to or who people are attached to. So you grow up with that. We obviously, can go on and on about a number of things. Color has always been a thing in our community for whatever reason. And then there are, just so many other categories that things fall into. Everything from how people look, how tall or short they are, all these, various things. But again, once you start to identify them, I think what you can do then is now address them to your point. And at least having a conversation with, somebody who's experienced in those areas now allows you to, peel back those layers and really get to the root of certain things that you might have always tried to figure out. Why am I always in these spaces? Once you kind of get that, it's nothing but, sky's the limit to some degree from that point on, because now you realize that I've been holding on to these things, or I've been allowing these things to shape, so much of what my life has looked like. And now that I've either put them down or I'm dealing with them, I feel the weight off my shoulders. I feel a sense of relief. But in turn, that now allows you to your point, address those things in your immediacy and the things that are going on in your world. Because, as you just said, the last thing you want to do is pass those traumas down, to the generations coming after you. Because once we get into those next levels. Now we just, living. We're not even living. We're actually surviving.
Right.
And this journey, as far as I'm concerned, is meant for you to actually live. It's not meant for you to survive, per se. I don't want to offend anybody because I don't want somebody to go, well, I'm not. For those of you who are dealing with any kind of traumatic situation, what I'm saying to you is try to get it addressed as soon as you can so then this way you can now start to get beyond it. Because dealing with that on a constant basis leads to stress, leads to all kind of other health challenges, and why certain things are so prevalent, especially in our community, everything from high blood pressure to cancer and all these various things. That largely in part is us holding on to things that we never addressed. And I always, try to convey that when I speak to people because we don't think of it like that. But I always tell people, your thoughts are so powerful. You lose it if you really understood how powerful your thoughts, to some degree are. So I agree with you.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So this is what we do, people. Amir and I, we sit down and we just have conversations, everyday life, just everything that goes on, things we might see. He might see something on the train. I might see something out in the cab. Whatever. We might see things. One thing I'm gonna warn you all about. A lot of times Amir and I go out and things just present themselves. They just present themselves, and you're going, okay, you really can't make this stuff up. So there's going to be moments like that when things are going to come up that we're just looking around because I don't know if you can tell, but as we're talking, I am looking around because things just happen to
Unfold.
get right in front of us.
And
It just happens.
That's what makes this podcast. That's what makes what we're doing so
Right.
fun.
Right.
We're talking about the things that most of us want to talk about, for whatever reason, may or may not ever talk about, or we keep it in our mind. I'm not saying that you're wrong for holding on to it. You got to express that at some point, and you got to share it with the world. Because once you start sharing, I promise you'll find tribes of people who, hey, wait, that happened to you too. Before you know it, you really have a great conversation, as Denise started and said from the beginning. That's what makes
Absolutely.
this so great. It's just the ability to take the information now, add it to your toolbox, and if and when you start speaking to the people in your circles, now you have some different things that you can present, some different ways to kind of help your people hopefully get through and beyond things that they're challenged.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I love this. I'm excited. It's a brand new challenge and
Something
thing
that
for
we
us
gonna
both.
do.
And I can't wait as we continue to unpack. And as you said, we're gonna be talking about a plethora of things. We're gonna talk about just about anything and everything you can think of.
Anything.
And we hope that you enjoy it. But if you can think of something, please
Right.
put it in the
Put in the
comments.
comments.
We
Tell us that you want to discuss it, and who knows? You
may-
might be here.
we're looking for that as well because one of the things that I realized in this new climate is there are a lot of things that are being expressed that may or may not be in its best format or in the truest forms, one. And two, it's just so much negativity. We've got to find a way to balance the scales again. One of the things that Denise and I talk about all the time is we've lost that in my estimation. I'm not saying that there aren't good people out there. I'm not saying there aren't great things happening. I'm just saying we don't seem to talk about it enough. And I get it. People love drama and people love craziness. But there's still some people who just enjoy doing the right thing, trying to share the right information, and build us up. We're a beautiful community.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. And I want to give a shout out to my niece, Crystal, because she was actually my inspiration for doing this. We had a discussion about issues that don't really come up in household or with families that our young ladies and young men should really know about getting older and because our bodies change and things like that. And she wanted to know, well, auntie, and because it was me, her, and my mother, and she's like, auntie, grandma, why y'all never told us about any of this stuff? And it's not that we didn't tell. Well, I told my mother. I said, well, when you knew, you should have told us. But everything was taboo. You know, a lot of things were taboo growing up, especially with young people. It's like, oh, they don't need to know this. But in all honesty, yes, they do. And my niece was, especially my honest, because I said, Amir and I come together all the time, and we talk about stuff all the time, and yet we haven't shared it with people. So we're gonna dive into a lot of things that were taboo growing up that a lot of us are going through now, and we're just figuring it out. We're going through and we're figuring it out. So for our young people that are going to be looking at this, for our young people who are going to be watching and listening to us, we want you to know that we're going to talk about these things so that you can know what's going to, and trust me, this is 18 and over. If you have it, everything's going to be 18 and over. So especially for your the parents one there, please do not watch this with your young people. Please don't watch this with your young people, because we are definitely going to talk about things that are taboo, and we don't want to offend anybody by talking about this stuff. So if you look, it does say 18 and over. I made sure I put that in there. So and I'm letting you know. Please keep it 18 and over so that we can have these discussions, so that we can talk about them. And I'm really looking. I'm excited because I'm really looking forward to doing this stuff. And I have a lot of people that I've already spoken to that have shared some stuff with me. And I said, you know what? We'll have you on one day. We're gonna bring you on, and we're gonna let you talk about the stuff that because some of the stuff I didn't know. And I'm like, wow, okay. Well, we're gonna need you to come up, because I'm not saying I know everything, but we don't know everything, and people go through things that we don't know about. So we want to share these things with you. We want to talk. We just want to talk. Right? We're just talking. We just want to talk. So we hope you enjoyed this one. We hope you enjoyed it. This is our trial run right now. We're going to do hours. I mean, 1 hour at a time, not 3, 4 hours. No, we're trying to do maybe an hour per show. But this is our trial run, and we're trying to figure it out. Want to see how many views we get. Want to see how many comments we get. How many people actually like this. Because again, we're not here to entertain you. We're not entertainers. We're not here to entertain you. All we want to do is talk. We want to talk. And we want to put information out there that you might not know. And things that we've gone through that somebody else might be going through and haven't talked about it yet. So we want to, these are the things that we want to do. We want to talk to you. We just want to talk to you. That's all. So, any last words, Amir?
Again, first and foremost, we want to thank you for tuning in. We also want to encourage you, if you like what you see, again, tell a friend to tell a friend. And again, we're looking forward to sharing, again, not only the amazing things that we talk about, but that she shared, the things that some of the people who we know have shared with us. We just want to really allow ourselves to have a real great space where we can share information and hopefully help each other grow